Guys, first of all, let's take a look at. Actually, let's begin with. Let's go to the evil eye discussion.
Legal.
This evil eye, okay? The evil eye. Now, I know in English,
this is a video that somebody sent me by Sheikh Hassan Ali.
In Arabic, it's called al-ayn. It's called al-ayn.
There was also one differently done around. I saw them around the same time for Halloween by Imam Sahib Webb as well.
Now, in those languages, you don't have the word evil inside it. In English, you have the word evil. And the reason why I'm putting this out to you is because the evil eye does not have to be given by someone who's evil. There doesn't have to be any evil intention there. It could be given by your close one, someone that loves you, someone you're spending a lot of time with. It could be given to you by your parents. Parents can give you evil eye. Grandparents can give it. You can have it from spouses. It can happen. It can happen from friends, someone who's close to you, who never had any evil intention. It can happen. So, what do you know, this whole evil eye thing, you got to understand that it can be someone close to them. So let me give you an example. My eldest son, about 10, 12 years ago, when he used to go to his grandparents' house, my son, alhamdulillah, never had a problem with his speech. But when he goes to his grandparents' house and he comes back, then all of a sudden he starts stuttering. His tongue gets stuck to his palate when he's speaking. Now, if I was one of those typical parents, I would have just, talked to the grandparents straight away and said, "That's it. My son's never going to come back to your house ever again. You evil people. What have you done to him?" And you ruin the entire relationship. They haven't intended anything back. They love him to bits. Then what happened? Well, sometimes when people are wowed by something and they don't say MashaAllah or they don't say Barakallahu Feek, then the person can be affected by evil eye. So what did I do? I recited straight away. Now this is something that I found from the ulama before me, the scholars before me, they tried and tested this out. You're not going to find this in a hadith. If you ask me for a hadith, I won't be able to present this to you. But there are sometimes some people, they try and find something in the Quran.
Right, so, okay. Now,
this evil eye. Okay?
Let me just
the evil eye.
Then they say, he's insane. They say this about the Prophet. So these are the two key verses that people use. Then they allude to certain hadith, which are found in various books of hadith, that al-aynu haq, that the evil eye is a reality. Now, this is found in terms of hadith. It is in Bukhari, it's in Muslim, it is in Ibn Majah, and there's a bunch of narrations in the Musnad of Ahmad. And we'll come to them as well. None of these narrations are authentic. Okay. And they do clash with the understanding of the Quran. And the Quran has never, ever spoken of the evil eye. Just to be clear, the Quran has never spoken of the evil eye. Never, not even once, has it mentioned the evil eye. It does mention hasad, which is envy, which is not the word for the evil eye in Arabic. The evil eye is al-ayn. Now, yet it will mention jealousy, it does mention envy, these things, but it does not mention the evil eye. So yes, some people have tried to fit that onto the evil eye, which is fine. I mean, that's their interpretation, but it's not. The Quran has never mentioned it. Just immediately beginning with this particular verse that was mentioned about slipping up, you will see that this is Ibn Ashur, the Maliki legend, the great Shaykh al-Islam of the 20th century, and the kind of who I have an ijaza going through as well, through Sidi Bu Khubza. Now, he writes in the tafsir of this, وَإِن يَكَادَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ. Now he writes, قلت, and I said, or I say, that وعلى جميع الوجوه. He says, on all perspectives, no matter how, the cookie crumbles, no matter how you look at this, right, no matter how you see it, فقد جعل الإزلاق بأبصارهم على وجه الاستعارة المكنية. He says the fact that they're trying to slip you up, this usage in the Quran is a metaphor. It is metaphorical usage. It's not literal. شبهت الأبصار بالسهام. He says that it is that the absar are then, the metaphor is likened to arrows. It is as though, and then he mentions it is as though, and that's that they're trying to kind of aim at you. It's how we would say in English, almost like looking daggers at someone. And he says, وهذا مثل قوله تعالى إنما استزلهم الشيطان ببعض ما كسبوا. It's like the verse of the Quran when Allah says the shaitan tries to, that indeed the shaitan has caused them to slip. Like he has slipped them up, he's tripped them. استزلهم الشيطان ببعض ما كسبوا, as a consequence of some of their actions. But this, the devil making them slip, is not a physical slipping. It's a metaphorical usage. So that's Ibn Ashur mentioning that in the tafsir. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because people will state that, look, these are the verses of the Quran. And you will see here, that's by Tha'labi, a tafsir that will mention the same kind of thing he's got there, and he quotes a poem as well as evidence to say that يتفاوضون إذا التقوا في مجلس نظرا, that نظرا يزل مواطئ الأقدام. He quotes the poem. Sorry, it's just a bit far out, not appearing so large on my screen. But he mentions as well very clearly that this is not a physical. And then he does go on to say some people claimed, oh, this is to do with the evil eye. But his first interpretation at the top, he mentions, is to do with ghayth wal adawa, is to do with an enmity, that they look daggers at you. Okay, that is Tafsir al-Tha'alabi. This here is Tafsir al-Qasimi. Okay, now you can see here as well that he mentions وَإِنْ يَكَادَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِم. He quotes obviously Zamakhshari. Now people might say, oh, Zamakhshari's Mu'tazili, but still we'll bring him in. Obviously Ibn Ashur wasn't, the other person, Tha'alabi, isn't, but we're still bringing, the people do quote Zamakhshari as well. He's from the Mufassirin, that mentioning a similar thing, that look, it's to do with the way they're staring at you. It's from their hatred, like they give, they're looking daggers at you. He says, نَظَرَ إِلَيَّ نَظْرًا يَكَادُ يَسْرَعُنِي, that the Arabs would say that, oh, he looked at me in such a way, boy, he almost, knocked me out, like he's staring at me with such kind of spitefulness. And he also quotes the same poem, where it mentions يُزِلُّ مَوَاطِعَ الْأَقْدَامِ, that some people, they look at you in such ways that it almost trips the steps of people. But it's nothing to do with the evil eye. Now, this is Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani quoted from his Fath. And he mentions that he's trying to highlight how does the evil eye work. And he mentions that, look, this is something that has been massively problematic for many people. And he goes into explaining that people differ. It might be by min summin, a kind of poison that is sent from the eye, and it goes from the Ainul A'in, as you can see there, the Ainul A'in in the third line, fil hawa, it goes through the air, ila badn al ma'yun, to the body of the person that is being looked at. And then he says, so that's the one he's kind of going with. And some people are giving some other interpretation, saying maybe he says that what you see is when you see something, you get envious. So within your body, you have these humors, the old Greek methods of how they understood the temperaments. So there's a kind of boiling that takes place. The boiling leads to this kind of almost like heat that then emanates out the eyes. It is then fired towards the other person, and that's how you afflict them. Now, when I'm saying these things, by the way, there's a reason I'm showing all of this, and I'm going to go into it more as well, is because when we say the evil eye, we have to understand, what did people think was happening? What is the evil eye? So there's obviously a mechanism to what is they believe is happening. Now, first of all, the evil eye is from the ghaib. Okay, so it's something which is unseen. Like, it's not, it's happening without us being able to detect it. Okay, this is for those who believe it happens. Secondly, as I'm going to show as well some research on the evil eye, you'll find that people believe that this could afflict even their own loved ones. It doesn't have to even be coming from a very evil place, as Sheikh Hassan Ali was saying, and all these people are teaching and spreading this kind of superstition nonsense, really. But anyway, this is this belief that you could afflict your own loved ones, and you'll see soon that some of the what it can do is it can cause disease, it can cause cancer, it can cause death, and I'll show this research shortly. Ethnographic research about the beliefs around the evil eye, what it does. It can cause famine, it can cause infant mortality, it can cause infants to die, it can cause strokes, it can cause a loss of beauty, it can cause sexual impotence. All of a sudden a man can't get an erection because somebody looked at him with the evil eye. These are the kind of things, and I'll bring this in shortly. Now, the fact that this is so ubiquitous, and often a key victim was the infant child. This was seen as often a key victim, and also beautiful women as well, but mainly infant children. So, as even in Hassan Ali's story, you saw him pushing that belief about his own child gets the evil eye from his own parents, the grandparents give him. So this was the common belief. Now, if something is so widespread, in Arabic, in usul, they will call this umum al-balwa. That it is mimma ya'ammu bihil balwa, mimma ta'ammu bil balwa. So this is so ubiquitous, it's everywhere, like it's inescapable. In that case, I ask you, since it's from the unseen, how can it be that God forgot to mention this? There is no mention of this in the Quran. Not one mention of the evil eye. Now you might say, well, this verse is kind of talking about the evil eye. If we twist it and we take this meaning, and in this story of Jacob, why did he say this? No, look, in the old Bible, as you'll see shortly, it's very clear. People are being told off. The Deuteronomic kind of books, you will see that people are being told to beware of the evil eye, to not cast the evil eye. They're being told very clearly in ancient other scriptures, in other things. Stories aside, it's being very clear. It's not like, because this is something from the unseen. So God, obviously, being from the unseen, needs to warn you about this. Because how the hell are you supposed to cope with something that you could give to your own child and it's not even from the seen? So obviously, if God isn't going to take care of it for you, what on earth are you supposed to do? So Allah never mentions in the Quran even once al-ain, the evil eye, not even once. So that is something, always remember that. If this was so important, Allah says, وَمَا فَرَّطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. We did not fall short in this book. So if this was so sound, this belief, why did God forget it? Did he choose not to? I mean, that if you say he just chose not to tell me, that's a bit raw, isn't it? Just think about it. This is something that you can never perceptibly see. So it's from the unseen. And who else can help you with it? God. But he chooses to stay silent on that. But oh, by the way, he mentions tons of stories about the Israelites who, and other things, which, okay, fine, they're stories, but it repeats the stories. But why can't God mention this? This is after all going to help me. So now, let me bring in here. You can see this. The belief in the evil eye is one of the things that historically, if you looked at different civilizations, it is one of the most shared historical beliefs to ever have been found. I mean, as in that is so widespread through so many cultures and civilizations and peoples and all these it is so widespread. There's so many different names for it. You'll get all of these you've got obviously al-ain, you've got evil eye in these different languages. Here you can see they've got it in Ethiopian, you've got it in Spanish, mal de ojo, you've got it in all these so many different cultures. You will find this. Now you might ask, well, okay, Mufti, if all these cultures have had it, which they have very clearly, I want to give straight away a bit of an understanding to why did this develop? Because one question could be, if so many different cultures had this belief, then, Mufti, how do we know that that's not authentic? Because they're not sharing a similar source. They're all arriving at this belief. So it's important to kind of get to the source with it. And that is that, you see, in the past, people saw the eye as an active agent. Now, the eyes have always been incredibly profound. They've been described as the windows to the soul. They have, symbolically, if you want to go into other kind of psychoanalytic frameworks and symbolism, you'll see whether, the two eyes, what these things are also found to be very almost a symbol of life in many ways, tied in with the body, the kind of physical structure. But not going too much into that, but the way you have two eyes will represent other, like whether it's breasts, whether it's things like this. Historically, people symbolized things like that in a lot of symbolism they saw, or whether it's to represent things like the testes, and you have the nose representing a phallus, and you have like a mouth representing things like the actual vulva and the vagina, and saliva as semen. Historically, as in when you go back thousands and thousands of years, people saw a lot of symbolism in things. And they saw the eye, one eye, often to represent, seen as like the opening, almost as it was symbolized as kind of life, life creating, because of its symbolistic structure, or not resemblance, but mirroring the vagina or the vulva. And it's often even used euphemistically, even in modern day cultures. Like, people may not know, but it's used as a euphemism when people will say, like even in Urdu, like maa ki aankh. And obviously what they, your mother's eye, but what they mean as a euphemism is the vulva, because that, the vagina turned on its side is seen as the one eye, the thing giving life. Now, these things obviously sound bizarre today, but if you go well into the past, into Egyptian mythology and the mythologies of the past, that you will find these things, symbolisms, and hence the one eye, quite prominent. You will find these things, but there's other structures as well. But the eye, put that aside, the eye was seen as a very, apart from being a powerful organ, but as an active organ. Now, this is important. So you can see here that, look, it was only up until the 1500s and arguably maybe the 1700s that people realized the eye is actually a receptive organ. It's not actually something active. So even people as far back as, you could look at people like Francis Bacon, the father arguably of science, of the scientific method, still believing that the eye was an active organ, that it actually, you see, this is to do with what you have, extramission or intramission. Does the eye cast out vision? Does it shoot out rays by which we see? Or is it because of light shooting into the eye? Now, it may today to many of you seem common sense, but for the most part of human history, people believed the eye was an active agent. It was not passive. So you will see even people like here you can see Francis Bacon, who's describing envy, in his words, as an ejaculation, that it's kind of sprouting out this envy from the eye. And that's Francis Bacon, the father of the, arguably the father of the scientific method. Now, you can see here that these are some of the conditions, the factors that come in with the evil eye. And this is according to a particular study, Anthropological Essays on the Evil Eye. They found that the power emanates from the eye or the mouth and strikes some object. And it's interesting how the eye and the mouth have been, you see, the hurt that comes from the mouth and the hurt that comes from the eye, the parallel that have been kind of drawn in history. And it's interesting how both on their own have symbolized, in symbolism, the female genitalia. And why that's interesting is because it's seen as a source of life. And in contrast, the mouth and the eye, although could be seen as sources of good, but of sources of destruction. You could destroy someone by casting a spell onto them, or by casting an evil glance. And you will see this, that the one affected may not be able to identify with the source of power, and the evil eye can be deflected. Now, this often in the past, they would refer to the person who has the evil eye, the Sahib al-Ain or the Sahibat al-Ain, as the fascinator. The fascinator, in you'll see that in a lot of literature or studies on it as the fascinator. Now, with the evil eye comes the ability to avert it, because you have to fight it off. But you can see here as well on this page that, look, the belief that what it affects. But the belief helps to explain or rationalize sickness, misfortune, or loss of possessions such as animals or crops. So these things were often done to help people cope. So people, when they were trying to look at why did the crops go bad, why did this person suddenly fall ill, you can see here that, look, harm and destruction, its possessors, the human, animals, or demons, these were the possessors of the evil eye. They were just normal people, but they would bring suffering. And you can see that here, that, look, to rob young men of their manliness and young women of their beauty. And infants were especially vulnerable. Now that is an important factor to kind of keep in mind, that people are trying to explain the inexplicable. And this was interesting. I thought I'd share this as well with you. that you can see here, that the thief, it's got a quote at the top where he raises high his fists with both, he raises his hands and he says, he makes a kind of incantation saying, "Take that." And he says, "Oh God, I square them off for you. That God, I've got them for you here." And people would do this. So you see, you would have in the past, you would get people that would, if they believed this person had the evil eye, they would hire them. They were an eye for hire. And there's stories of the Arabs would sometimes starve, or not starve, but make certain people go on a fast for 3 days. And then when after those 3 days, they would tell him that, "Look at that camel now." And he would cast this evil eye onto the camel, and people tried to do this with the Prophet as well, by the way. But obviously, the evil eye is nonsense. It's BS. It doesn't have a reality. But they tried this. They thought, and this is people who, like I said, are trying to explain. Now, whenever something, whenever something inexplicable was happening, people will refer to the best possible answers that they had. Now, when you have something from the unseen, you must have something that can prevent it, that can propel it, and prevent it from happening. And that's where you get the rise of amulets. So you will see that this is these are some examples. You'll have the Eye of Horus, because in Egyptian mythology, what you have is Seth, who he injures the eye of Horus, and then it's replaced by Thoth. But then the Eye of Horus is used to prevent the evil eye. And you've got things like in Islamic cultures, you've got like the Hand of Fatima, and you've got in Christian cultures and all cultures, you will find this belief of the evil eye going back almost 5,000 years. You've got the ancient Egyptian civilizations, you've got the Sumerian civilizations, coming right up to luminaries, very profoundly educated people. You will see them. So here you can see, look, in the Middle Ages, many luminaries, including Thomas Aquinas, Dante, Leonardo da Vinci, Martin Luther, Francis Bacon. Now, these are not, by any measure, we're not talking about dumb people. The people were very intelligent that believed in things like this. Now, the question was, why? And it comes back to how the organ operates, the eye operates. It casts out a lens, and you have to remember this. So if I can just bring this up here just to show you, that you will see that, look, it's only up until recently that intromission theories, that actually light comes into the eye, as opposed to the eye shooting out light, has actually taken off. This is not this is something which is quite recent. It's not an old. So you can see there from the ancient texts, this is how people believed the eyes worked. So if the eye does work like that, you see, it makes perfect sense. It makes sense that since the eye works in this way, it is scientific to believe that, well, maybe the rays that I'm shooting are, in fact, also causing some kind of a harm. Because that was the belief that people felt. Extramission, not intromission, was the way forward, or was reality. Surprisingly, people, you have to realize that when this belief was when this belief was contrasted with, actually, no, light is taken in by the eye. not cast it out. It's not actually extramission, it's intromission. That this belief was first posited by a Muslim scientist, Ibn al-Haytham. And you can see that he was known as al-Hayzen. He's in Western literature, Ibn al-Haytham was one of the first people to highlight that actually the eye, it does not, it does not project. It actually brings in, it takes in light, it absorbs the light that's coming in. It's not firing out those images that people think. But if you come back to Muslim literature, right, because if you come back to Muslim literature, you're going to find that even though Ibn al-Haytham did write this, and he explains how light works and how it kind of comes in, and light and refraction and other things, but it does not proliferate, it does not become mainstream, his view. People are still on the old theory. That's so here is an example of look, this is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, the often quoted, who I say, Wahhabiyun ka dada. He's not the dada, that's Ibn Taymiyyah. This is he's he's one of the what can we say, one of the uncles, if you like, one of the chache. But Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, who I do like, by the way, for some of his reasoning, some of them, him highlighting here that, look, tanafasa fuqaha, that you will see that the scholars, they competed against one another in trying to define the eye. And this is being written, but one of the most prominent definitions that remains is that of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. And he writes, they are sihamun, arrows, mini arrows and rays, takhruju min nafs al-hasid wal-a'in. They are emitted from the eye by the person who is viewing, who is looking. Nahw al-mahsud, or either ma'yun they write as well, or ma'in. The person, the object, the one that they are viewing and looking at, he uses the word arrows. These little arrows are fired. Or you could say today rays, that you are extramitting these mini arrows, firing them, these projectiles, towards whoever you're looking at. And he says, taratan wa tukhti'uhu tara. And sometimes they get them, sometimes they miss them, because these are evil rays. They're not your normal vision rays. These are the envious rays that come out, these little arrows, and you shoot them, but sometimes they don't hit the target. They miss. فَإِنْ صَادَفَتْهُ مَكْشُوفًا لَا وِقَايَةً عَلَيْهِ. Imagine he had no prevention, wiqaya, nothing to protect him, no protection. He wasn't wearing no protection. Ibn Qayyim. I am advertising for Durex. So if the person wasn't wearing any protection, see how day and age makes so much of a difference. Today would be like, what's he talking about? So if the person didn't have no protection over him, he says atharat fihi wala bud, and then he says it affects him, impacts him, and there's no escaping from it. He says wa in sadafathu hadaran bis silah la manfadha fihi lissiham lam tu'athir fihi. He says, however, if they were to impact him, and he did have, if they were to impact him and he did have protection, if he did have protection, then in that case, the arrows, he says, can't penetrate through the protection. I'm not quite sure. He doesn't go through what the protection is that the person has, but he says that then the arrows can't penetrate through into, and this is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, and this definition is one of the most widespread definitions that people like you saw earlier on, all these imams are basing their beliefs on. They're basing it on this kind of belief of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, that the eye is shooting these arrows at people. So now just coming back, you will see here that, look, it's important to understand that, look, here, as part of this study, this was a study done on the evil eye and the language of distress, reviews 8 theories focusing on various interrelated phenomena. Now, in this, what the conclusion is that he views evil eye belief as a means to explain, express, and cope with personal experiences or suffering. Now, that is very important to understand that, because that explains why these people are doing that. You see, you can't just, you see, because what these people weren't necessarily stupid people. I mean, sorry, they weren't stupid people. You know, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, Ibn Hajar, whether it's Francis Bacon, whether it's even Shakespeare, whether it's Dante, whether it's Leonardo da Vinci, whether these people were intelligent people. They weren't stupid. When they're saying, oh, these arrows are firing out and this and this, why they've come up with this, first of all, there's a background to this. The background is these people are trying to explain phenomenon or phenomena around them that otherwise is very difficult to explain. When somebody just suddenly falls ill. Remember, the theory of germs has not been introduced yet. Bacteria and stuff like this. This is why when the plague was spreading, people didn't understand how the plague was spreading. So initially they think, oh, is it a particular animal? Is it this? They didn't realize it was these fleas and things like this. They didn't understand that kind of microbial essences. So eventually they just say, oh, it's a curse from God. Because after, you know, even Ibn Khaldun and these people, they write, after exhausting everything, they say, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Then, you know, it's not that, it's not these particular mice, it's not these rats, it's not the water, it's not this, it's not that. The disease is still spreading. Eventually, they just say, well, you know what, it's God. God's punishing us then. Because you resort to the unseen. Because as humans, we are rational beings. We attempt to rationalize things. We need, even if our conclusion is irrational, but it's still a rationalizing of the phenomenon at hand. Like we're still trying to give some explanation. And that is incredibly important. So you see here that, look, in a study, you've got Rakoczy, or however they pronounce his name. He goes to highlight that it's very important to understand that, you see, in antiquity, this was not seen as superstition, like the way they saw magic and things like this. They believed this, the evil eye, to be scientific. This to them was a scientific belief. So if you went to, if you went back then to people and said, look, that, how do you believe in this? The answer is because it's scientific. This is actually science. The eye is actually emitting rays, this extramission. And once again, coming back to that picture, this is their kind of medical scientific journals of the day and age. It's very important to understand that. And what's weird is even today, you see, when Weiner et al. Conducted certain studies, they found that you will see that in their studies that almost 50% people, that's half of the public that they are researching, believed, of adults, not kids, adults believed in the emission theory, in the extramission theory, that the eyes still emit rays or emit something, not in the passive intromission theory. So that's to understand that, because it is important that we do grasp what is going on. that, you see, people were coming from this backdrop, that this is how the eyes work. So to them, this was science. It wasn't like, they weren't basing this on, oh, this is a particular ritual or a cult practice, or this was science of the world. And this is why it was so universal, because people believed that's how the eyes work. Now, obviously, in the last few centuries, these theories have been debunked. Thankfully, first of all, to Ibn al-Haytham, the Muslim scientist who kind of first posits this, and then later research clearly demonstrates that the eyes do not emit anything. There are no rays or arrows or things that the eyes fire. It doesn't work that way. The eyes, they are passive. They take in the photons that reach the eyes and the light that reaches us. So once you understand this, you understand that people are coming from this backdrop. They are then imposing, what they're doing is finding this with a confirmation bias. In psychology, a confirmation bias is when you already have a belief and you are now approaching something with that preconceived judgment, and you're going to find that thing in what you're looking for. So they now approach Islam. Now, the Quran there is not one verse in the Quran that mentions the evil eye. But they approach this trying to find it, because they believe, oh, this is science. This is the world. Everybody knows the evil eye exists. So they end up finding certain stories and they assume that's talking, like they see this verse, وَإِنْ يَكَادَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, that لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ, that these people disbelieve, they almost try to slip you up with that must be with the evil eye, even though many Mufassirin did not say that, and I showed they didn't go with that. But still, they will, that makes sense now. This is what the verse is talking about. Then you've got, you see, if we go to, I'm not sure. Oh, this is the same one. وَإِنْ يَكَادَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ. This is Maulana Abdul Karim. Those of you that read Urdu, I would definitely recommend his tafsir. You see, his tafsir in Urdu is so ahead of its time. Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari, who is actually quite, he was from a Salafi background, but incredibly enlightened. I've never, seldom, there were a small group, a bubble within the Salafi circles, or the Ahl Hadith circles of India, a bubble within them that were incredibly reason-based. And I think the only reason they were Salafi was because the only alternative was to be Hanafi. And Hanafis obviously were not the voice of reason, unfortunately, in India. Right, so he also takes that approach as well, and I'm just trying to think. Yeah, so he translates it as well, that look, that he says, istara, that these people, the kuffar, istara ghurte hain, that they stare at the Prophet in such a way, यूं मालूम होता है कि वो आपको अपनी नजर से फिसला देंगे, that they will, it's as though they want to trip you over the way they're looking at you, they're staring at you. और जब ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है, and when they can't do that, then वो कहते हैं कि वो तो मजनून है. Then they say, because obviously it's to no avail, that he is insane. إنه لمجنون, that the Quran mentioned. So I thought I'll just show that, and the reason I'm showing that is for, I don't know why did I have this one here? Let me just see. Must be a reason. Oh, right, no, this is something else. The other verse that they use, and I'll bring this up, is Surah Yusuf. Now, this is so silly. Okay, it's so silly that people use Surah Yusuf to show this. Because really, there is nothing that, there's nothing there Let me just see. Right, okay. If I've also got here the... I was just seeing if I've got it on the screen. I may not have it on the screen. That's not a problem. Right, so this Surah Yusuf. Now, Surah Yusuf, one of the most amazing surahs in the Quran. It's the only surah that contains, the whole thing is almost a narrative. It's like a story that follows through. And it's the story of Joseph. But and everybody I'm sure is familiar with the story of Joseph. If not, then do read it, please. It is amazing in the Quran. Now, you know that what happens from, Yusuf alayhi salam, he ends up becoming this great, in a seat of power by helping the king interpret certain dreams or visions that they've had about an impending famine that is to strike Egypt. But moving forward, let me just get to this. Moving forward, his siblings who had betrayed him earlier on, the majority of them, and they'd kind of landed him in this difficulty, they come to Egypt for crops and to kind of like trade. And it mentions وَجَاءَ إِخْوَةُ يُوسُف فَدَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ فَعَرَفَهُمْ وَهُمْ لَهُ مُنْكِرُونَ. And then the brothers of Joseph came, and this is to Egypt, while Joseph is in a position of power. He recognized them, but they obviously don't recognize him because they would never imagine that Joseph is now this, this king, or king-like figure in this powerful kingdom of Egypt, because they sold him as a slave. In fact, they didn't even sell him as they chucked him in this in this well to die. So they're assuming that he's dead. Now, what happens is وَلَمَّا جَهَّزَهُمْ بِجَهَازِهِمْ قَالُوا ائْتُونِي بِأَخٍ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَبِيكُمْ. So when he's providing them the kind of grain and the stock that they require, he says to them, because obviously in conversation they've acknowledged that they have another brother, Benjamin. So he says that, you know what, bring me your brother, like come to me again with him, and can't you see that? Look how not only have I given you I've given you extra. Like, so he was very generous in giving them what they'd come for, the stock and the grain. And he says, and if you don't bring him next time, then don't bother coming. Now, what he does is he tells his own workers that when you're packing their goods, pack their original grain and stock with their stuff. So when they go back, because obviously they're not planning on coming back till another year, but when they go back and find that, oh, wow, they accidentally have returned our original stock, they're going to be cunning to think, well, I know, why don't we go and get some more? We can get it for free. Now, so he says to his people, Joseph, that, do this. So when they go, they will kind of come back. Now, when they do go back to their father, they tell him, Ya abana muni'a minna al-kayl, فأرسل معنا أخانا نقتل وإنا له لحافظون. Now, the interesting thing is, they come back, they kind of like, according to some interpretations, he didn't give them anything. According to some, he did actually give them, but also sneaked in the original goods. According to some, he just sneaked in the original goods. Nevertheless, my understanding is he actually was generous to them. So when they go back, they kind of think that, I know, let's go back. Now, they say to their father that, look, send Benjamin with us, because you know what, we're going to get double what we're going for. So they convince their father. Now, this is the verse I want to come to. Verse 67, وَقَالَ يَا بَنِي. Now he says, my children, my sons, لَا تَدْخُلُوا مِنْ بَابٍ وَاحِدٍ وَادْخُلُوا مِنْ أَبْوَابٍ مُتَفَرِّقَةٍ. When you get to, most people say it was at Memphis, which Memphis is the old pharaonic kind of great city, which is close to modern-day Cairo. It's not modern-day Cairo, but it's close to it. And it's or referred to as Memphis, or Memph in Arabic. Some people say it was Memphis. Some people said it was the city of Thebes. Whichever it was, but it was a great city. And he says to them, when you get there, don't go in through one gate, spread out. Now, he says, وَمَا أُغْنِي عَنْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ, I cannot protect you from anything that God has destined for you if some harm is destined. But this is my advice, إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ وَعَلَيْهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. You should have trust in God. And then it mentions وَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمْرَهُمْ أَبُوهُمْ مَا كَانَ يُغْنِي عَنْهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Nothing, it didn't save them from anything. They did try the different doors, but it didn't save them, except إِلَّا حَاجَةً فِي نَفْسِ يَعْقُوبَ قَضَاهَا. It says, except it was just something which their father, it was like something that it gave him peace of mind, but it didn't really do anything to help them. Okay, so what was this talking about? Now, so people will say this is referring to the evil eye. Like you will see many of these mashayikh, Imam Suhaib Webb uses that as a verse. Many people use this as a verse. Many mufassirin, by the way, have highlighted that that's not actually necessarily the case, that it's to do with Sam'ani mentions it, other people mention it as well, that this is to do with a plot that is for their safety. Now, I want to ask you something. And by the way, that is what Ibn Ashur, in his tafsir, I thought I had it open here, but I didn't. In his tafsir, if you check Ibn Ashur, the great Maliki legend, he says the same thing. It was to prevent them from this plot. It's the same thing which Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari mentions in his tafsir. It was to save them. It was a safeguarding thing because you would draw attention to you. It was to kind of be as, you just kind of blend in as much as you can. That was the whole purpose, not this evil eye. Now, if this was the evil eye, I just want to ask you, those people who said this was because of the evil eye, Allah hasn't mentioned it, but they're reading into the reading between the lines. If this was the evil eye, then I ask you something. Why is it the evil eye? They say because they were so beautiful. The sons of Jacob were so beautiful and amazing. Now, I don't know where they get that from, but okay, let's roll with it. Okay, because there's nothing mentioned about them being so beautiful and amazing, or I don't know. Okay, there is about Yusuf alayhi salam, Joseph. So maybe they're assuming the brothers were also very beautiful. Okay, let's say they were. They're incredibly handsome and charming and all this. Then, hold on a minute. Did you guys forget to read the verses just before it? They've already been to Egypt. They've already been in the palace. They've already met the king. They've already asked for stocks and grains, and they've already done this. Those people have already seen them. This is not, that would only make sense if this was the first time they were ever to enter this place. They've already been and have returned. And because they found their stock again, they're thinking, I know, let's do a sly one. Let's go back again and pretend this is fresh stock and we can get it again. So you tell me what makes more sense. If some people are about to try a sly one, like if somebody came to your shop, you've got a big shop, and he comes and somehow he returns with his original. Let's say he somehow manages to scam something, or inadvertently he doesn't realize, but you give him some extra, but they're a particular group. Let's say a whole family come, and they're a whole family. You remember them. They're, all these bunch of brothers. Now they come and you happen to, let's say, accidentally put in their bag some extra suits. Let's say it's a clothes shop and you've put some extra things in there. Now they realize, oh, we've got some extra things. We can actually get a refund for these things and we've made some free money. Would it make sense for them to come back as the whole group? Because you might actually remember and clock them. And you think, oh, actually, I remember you guys. You guys didn't even buy that. I remember you guys only bought these things specifically. Would it not make sense to come kind of like dispersed, or come just one of them to turn up and say, hi, hey, I bought this? And that's what they were doing. They were trying to be sly. So Yaqub alayhi salam tells them, you know what? Don't go in together in a crowd. Split up. Because if you are going to go, then go like that. Because he's trying to obviously look out for them. The evil eye makes no sense because one, they've already been to Egypt. They've already seen the king and the granaries, and the armies have already seen them. Secondly, if it's because of their beauty, how the hell do they land in Memphis? They're going to walk through the roads. Are people not looking at them on the roads? Does the evil eye only work at the gates of Memphis? Does nothing else, is that only when does the evil eye, how come it didn't work the first time? But now it's going to work. And by the way, when you set off from Canaan or wherever, there's no evil eye all this way. Hundreds and hundreds of miles, there's no evil eye. Even on the road to Memphis, there's no evil eye. Oh, but once you approach the gate, oof, toba toba. the one eye is going to be incredibly active. Right, so this is the thing that it makes absolute zero sense. That is not what Yaqub alayhi salam was saying at all. So I just want to be incredibly clear on that. As to the hadith, now, so the Quran mentions nothing. Now there are certain ahadith that have been transmitted. Now I want to highlight something. You see, when you find something that is not in the Quran, and it's such a crucial belief, you need to see it suspiciously. It's very suspect. And this is what Imam Malik said. He said, be very wary of things that you do not find them. You only find them in these hadith. So there are certain hadith, there's a narration, and generally the hadith come mainly from Abu Huraira. It's the same kind of hadith that is being used in different sources, where he says, al-aynu haq, that the eye is true, is a reality. And it also comes with, the Prophet said tattoos are haram. That's in its fuller hadith. Which is strange because according to many Malikis, very clearly tattoos are not haram. Okay, so it already contradicts that hadith. But, okay, so Abu Huraira. And from him, the chain is coming through Abdul Razzaq from Ma'mar. Now, we already know, and this is in Bukhari, it's going to be in the same hadith, you'll find it in Muslim, you'll find it scattered, but this is one of the core pillars upon what this whole hadith thing is built on. There's only mainly a few narrations, only a few people transmit, even though, think about it, the evil eye is everywhere, yet only a few people, and one of the main people is Abu Huraira. Always Abu Huraira, who comes towards the end of Islam. Right, but yet he seems to know this. Now, Abdul Razzaq, by the way, just so we're clear, just so you are familiar with him, Darqutni says, even though he is generally reliable, but he's somebody who makes a lot of mistakes when transmitting from Ma'mar. Okay, Ahmad ibn Hanbal says that many narrations from Abdul Razzaq from Ma'mar are fabrications, mawdu'. Okay, are fabrications. What does Abu Hatim say about him? He says, you can write his hadith, but you can't use it as an evidence. Okay. Now, Abu Dawood says that he would present certain false narrations. Nisa'i puts him in his du'afa and says somebody who got, he says anybody that took from him in his old age is massively problematic. Now, this is one of the main narrations. The other narration that you get, some come through people like, they come through Ibn Abbas, or they come through, there's one odd narration coming from Aisha, but with the same link. And that, you see it through Wahib, this person who once again is problematized for, he gets dementia in his old age. Abu Dawood says that, he's somebody who suffers from dementia in his old age. Other people highlight that as well. So that's the other chain coming from Ibn Abbas. And the interesting thing is, look, with Ibn Abbas, it's important to realize that Ibn Abbas radiallahu an, although he's a glorious companion, during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, he spends very little time in the Prophet's company because he's a little boy. He's very young and he's in Mecca. It's only during the Fath of Mecca that he spends some time with the Prophet, and there's a disagreement how much time he spends with the Prophet. Some people said that they only put it down to so many weeks, and some, at most a few months. Other people stretched it into several months he spends with the Prophet. But that's all he spends with the Prophet because he's very young at that time. Now, prior to that, he lives in Mecca. He's not in Medina. So it's only after the conquest of Mecca that he's united with the Prophet ﷺ, and then he spends some time because the Prophet marries his aunt, and then he spends some close time when the Prophet is getting married and things like that with the Prophet, and then there's a dispute how much does that time stretch to. Nevertheless, the interesting thing is, well, is this it? One odd narration here from Ibn Abbas. What about shouldn't this be something every companion should be talking about, since it afflicts everybody? And then, let alone that you see in his narrations, another person that pops up is, you will see Muslim ibn Ibrahim. Now, that's also one of the people in the chain transmitting from Ibn Abbas as well as Wahib. You'll get Muslim ibn Ibrahim, who people, even Imam Ahmad, Abu Dawood has highlighted, but Imam Ahmad also transmits it from him, transmits it as well. But Abu Dawood has highlighted it, that he was asked, what do you say about Muslim ibn Ibrahim, who's in this chain that's transmitting from Ibn Abbas? He says that did not write a single thing from him. Then you have another narration as well from Sahal ibn Hunayf. Now, this narration appears in the Muwatta, and it appears with several versions of it in Musnad of Ahmad as well. Now, this is to do with two companions. They are Sahal ibn Hunayf, and you've got Amir ibn Rabi'ah, and they are basically they're on some journey, and they want to take a bath. They want to take a quick wash. And Imam Malik brings this in his Muwatta, but my understanding is Imam Malik brings it to show you that this is strange, it's weird. So in this narration, but Imam Ahmad brings it with many other narrations as well to it, where basically there's other things, and there's confusion in this narration as well, by the way. One says, oh, he puts this, he takes his clothes, this kind of garment. Basically what's happening is they're going to shower, one of them goes, Sahal ibn Hunayf, and he gets undressed. The other one sees him and says, wow, I've never seen thighs as amazing as yours. And basically so sexy and appealing. And it's in a sexual way. It's not in a strong, like, wow, those thighs are strong. He's saying it in a sexy way, that he says, like, oh, like even a virgin girl doesn't have thighs as, amazing as yours. So it's in a very kind of sexual connotation. Which is really strange that this is the hadith. And then what happens, Sahal ibn Hunayf falls incredibly ill, wa'ika, and he can't kind of do anything, he can't move, and then they tell the Prophet, and in this narration the Prophet says, oh, what's wrong, you afflicted him with the evil eye, why don't you take a bath? So he takes this bath, and now he's better, and then this is the narration, as this part is in a narration by Ibn Abbas as well, that, oh, if you with the evil eye, if people ask you to take a bath, apparently the cure is that the fascinator, the one who gives the evil eye, if he takes a bath, somehow it kills the spell. Which is crazy because no Muslims practice that part. Have you ever heard somebody going to somebody say, take a bath? Because you've given the evil eye. But apparently that's what in this hadith. And then there's other strange wording in some versions. No, Amr ibn Rabi'ah is taking off his clothes, which is confusing because it's the other person who's taking it off. But and in some narrations, they are both looking for yaltamisan al-khamar. They're looking for khamar, which is a strange word to be using here because khamar normally means alcohol. But they're saying no, khamar. This is the finding a place which is a kind of like a shelter to take a bath. We're using the word. They're not using the word satar or shajar or tree or something. They're using the word khamar, which normally means alcohol. But anyway, like really oddities about this hadith, which people don't normally use those kind of words. So this is the other narration of Sahal ibn Hunayf that they're resting this on, an incident, an anecdote, which, by the way, the result of taking a bath, nobody practices that. Nobody practices that. Who practices, oh, I think he gave the evil eye, can you go and the fascinator go and take a bath? And how does that cure the rays, the arrows that have been fired? So Imam Malik bringing this, I feel, in my understanding, that there's two ways of looking at this. One, that Imam Malik is bringing this to because he brings many hadith to show that I'm aware of this, but this is strange. And he's telling you the other thing is it could have been that because this was seen as the science of the age, that people accepted that maybe these incidents, here they are, they're strange, but they're here. Why do I not believe that the Prophet ﷺ said this? Because if this was authentic from the Prophet, then I can guarantee it would have come to us flooded by so many companions, and we would have found it in the Quran, because it was something ubiquitous and it was something that was necessary, and we don't find it. So the ahadith are baseless, they're all problematic. The ruwat, whether it's going to be Abdul Razzaq from Ma'mar, which transmits fabrications, whether it's going to be Wahib, who kind of messes up in his, later on Abu Dawud transmitting that, whether it's going to be Muslim ibn Ibrahim, who Ahmad ibn Hanbal saying, I didn't write anything from him. These are the kind of chains, or whether it's this anecdote of these two companions on a journey one day, and then there's confusion on, okay, who's getting undressed, and then there's confusions on what strange words like, oh, they're both looking for khamar, which, alcohol, but no, it's not alcohol, it's shelter. They're looking for shelter to take a bath, and then he somehow is so fascinated by his thigh because it's more prettier than the thigh of a virgin girl, which is incredibly strange. I don't know why that would even be appealing, because that is not really made, because it's white skin. It's mentioned in some of the narrations, his thigh is so white, it's so sexually appealing. I find this incredibly weird, and then the result, by the way, the cure is something which nobody practices anyway. So if they're going to use this, then they ought to be using the cure, which nobody practices. Nobody says that the people with the ayn they use all these kind of rituals, as you heard Sheikh Hassan Ali going on about, spreading this superstition, trying to say, well, this is what we do. We read 41 times, or we read this number of times, this particular thing, which he even admits is not in any sunnah or from the Quran or hadith, but we've made it up and it seems to work. It doesn't work. It works because it's all in your mind to start off with. So you're just playing tricks on yourself. There's no reality to this. And this is based really on the widespread belief of extramission from the eyes, which is false. It's actually intromission. And it is a testimony of the truthfulness of the Quran. Wallahi, I find these things miraculous, that the Quran from that day and age could have so easily expressed that the evil eye existed. It could have just said it. Don't give each other the evil eye, or this is a cure from the evil eye, because it was the widespread scientific belief of the age. Yet not once did the Quran mention it, and it actually contrasts it by trying to show you that actually Allah is in control. There is no hocus pocus. Allah says that, look, what is set for you is set for you. It is from fate. It is from destiny. It is not from these hocus pocus silly things. Okay. And using the verse hasidin idha hasad, first of all, hasad is to do with jealousy and envy. It is not the evil eye. It's not the ayn. Right? So it is hasad. envy, and the hasidin, you seek refuge from the hasid, idha hasad, the envious person when he becomes envious. Why? Because when envious people become envious, what do? They act out in malice. They cause harm. They jeopardize your things. They sabotage your products or your properties or possessions. That's what they do. It's the acting out that you're seeking refuge from, and hence قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب, from the darkness of the nightfall as it falls. Why? Well, what's so evil about the nightfall? It's not the nightfall, it's the things that happen as a consequence of the nightfall. It's what happens as a consequence of the envy. So, okay, I hope that makes a lot of sense. Min sharrin naffathati fil uqad, and those women who blow into knots. It's not the blowing into the knots that were the problem. It was the evil that was associated with this whole phenomenon, the superstition, the sacrifices they were making, the harm that was causing, this whole ridden superstitious culture in society was what you were seeking refuge from. It was not just women going blowing in knots that somehow had some superpowers that could now cause you to drop dead. That is just dumb. That is stupid. It was this whole culture that was associated, and Ibn Ashur writes about that in his tafsir, that it was the things associated with it. As Allah says, شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبْ, the nightfall as it falls, the darkness. What's so evil about that? People say, oh, but you're seeking it's evil because Allah said you seek refuge. It's what's associated with it. The scary stuff that comes with it. نَفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. It's not that, it's what's associated with it. The consequences, the beliefs, the superstitions, the anxiety, the stress, all of these things. The envy, it's what's associated with it. All of these things in that verse were to do with associations. Okay, I hope that makes sense.